Hi, everybody. This is Ted. Just when I thought it was done and I had my last conversation with Peter Tragos, we have a new development in the Karen Reed case that came up. Peter is coming from a place very far away. Where are you right now, bud?
I'm in Greece, man, the motherland,
Nice.
visiting back to my roots.
Love it. What have you guys been doing?
We were around Athens for a few days. It was awesome. Visited a bunch of the sites, and now we're cruising, kind of island hopping. Looking forward to the rest of the trip. It's been awesome.
All right. Well, I think I would trade places with you in a heartbeat. All right. The reason why we are talking is I got my hands on this and I shared it with Peter. I don't know how well you can see it. It's a letter that Alan Jackson wrote to Boston Police Commissioner Michael Cox. Of course, Jackson is Karen Reed's attorney from LA. And the letter specifically talks about Officer Kelly Dever, who testified in Reed's second trial, and Jackson is asking that Dever be placed on the Brady List. Can you tell people what the Brady List is and what that means if you're a police officer and you get tagged with that?
Yeah, it's not good. It means that there is something to use against you for all the criminal defense lawyers and criminal defendants for any cases that you worked on. It means that you have done something wrong. And in this scenario, he wants other lawyers to know anytime Miss Dever is on a case, they should be able to ask her about her false memories and issues that stemmed from the Karen Reed trial.
So, just to remind everybody, during the trial, Jackson asked Dever about statements that she made to the FBI, where Dever, according to Jackson, said that she saw then Chief Ken Berkowitz of Canton Police and ATF agent Brian Higgins in the Sally Porter garage of the Canton Police Department for a quote wildly long time with Karen Reed's SUV. When Deborah got on the stand in the retrial, Jackson started asking her about that, and she said that was a false memory. So that is essentially the basis of the claim that Jackson has made that, hey, that you know, and I mean, he goes in typical Jackson style. He says, "quote Either Officer Dever lied about having a false memory, or she actually suffers from a condition that subjects her to false memories." I mean, that's classic Jackson, in my opinion.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. She's an officer. She's testifying. People's lives are on the line. Her work is very important. If she is somebody that's either A, willing to lie, like you said, or B, somebody who creates false memories for when it happened, we were all like, what does that even mean? If you're somebody that does that as an officer, you shouldn't have people's lives in your hands. I mean, I think that's just something that's true. And I think that's something most criminal defense lawyers would argue on cases where their clients were subjected to work testimony, police work at all by Miss Dever. And this is something that comes up. This Brady list is something that comes up in discovery. Every case, criminal defense attorneys will ask, hey, turn over everything you have on these officers. Is there any Brady material? Is there anything? Brady material is exculpatory information that proves your client's innocent, but it is also information that's good for your client, information that could impeach state witnesses or Commonwealth witnesses in this jurisdiction. This is spot on. This has to be Brady material. She has to be on the Brady list. Other criminal defendants and criminal defense attorneys need to know about this in any past cases she has worked on and any future cases she may work on.
I mean, could this be just be an honest mistake though by Dever? That she said, I think that she might have been influenced by a lot of what she saw in the news and on the media, and then if but first of all, we don't even know if Boston police will even consider this. And if they do they factor in? Do they bring her in? Do they interview her, or can they just say, "No, Alan Jackson, we're not listening to you"?
So there's a couple things I want to say to your question. It's a really good question. Number one, I don't know what Boston Police is going to do, but can I tell you what a prosecutor should do? If I'm looking at it as a prosecutor and she's on my case, I'm turning this over. I'm not taking the chance that we go to trial, we win, we get a conviction, we put the bad guy away, and we lose on appeal because we didn't turn over this exculpatory information that I, as a lawyer, I would like a lawyer to argue with a straight face that this is not an issue. And then number two, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, one of the things I talk about a lot on YouTube is give people grace. I really want to do that. I try to do that my best. I try to do that with Hank Brennan a lot through this trial. She erased that by saying she created a false memory. And we don't have to change it from her own words. When people tell you who they are, I like to listen to them. She said, I created a false memory, and that alone. So, is she a liar? Did she create a false memory? We don't have to call her a liar, but let's say she created a false memory. That is impeachment material and impeachment information that all criminal defense lawyers and criminal defendants that have Kelly Dever on their case should be able to use against her at trial.
Okay, that's interesting. So, regardless if there was any motivation there, you're saying the fact that it happened, it came out during one of the most high-profile cases in the country, that will probably stick with her. And that's one of the things Jackson talks about the letter. Essentially says, "Hey, you can choose to ignore this, but you're going to run into constitutional issues down the road." And is that what you're getting to?
Yeah, absolutely. And as a prosecutor, you don't want this mess. You don't want this to happen. This is going to be something that is significantly difficult for Ms. Dever to get over that this happened. That's something we talked about when the trial happened, that how do you deal with this now? And also, you can quibble sometimes if you're an officer and you maybe change an element or a detail in your testimony. And you say, oh, I made a mistake or I was wrong or whatever it may be. That's very different than saying you created a false memory. It's difficult to quibble with her own words in this scenario.
The timing of this is interesting. It comes one day after Commissioner Cox was asked about Kelly Dever. It was the first time he was doing a news conference on another topic. I was not there, but I watched what he said, and I found his statements interesting. He said that he really did not know that Dever was involved in this case, that he has 3,000 officers, and it was something that he seemed to say, "Hey, I don't know what you guys are talking about." And to me, I thought that was strange, just because it was so high profile. I mean, granted, this conversation that Dever had or testified that she had with Commissioner Cox would have been before the first trial, so maybe 2023, early 24. But what were your thoughts on that? The fact that Michael Cox essentially said that he didn't remember this conversation.
Well, number one, and I'm not poking fun here. This is not a joke. If I was going to say Commissioner Cox is correct and Ms. Dever is wrong, you'd go straight to this is somebody who's already admitted creating false memories. Did she do it again? And that's exactly the position that a lot of criminal defendants may be in if it's a he said, she said situation with Ms. Dever. More realistically, maybe he forgot. Maybe he doesn't want to admit it. Maybe he wants to move on. Maybe he thinks at this point that case is over, which is kind of what he mentioned in the discussion or the interview. That case is over. Let's move on. I don't remember having anything to do with Karen Reed's case, and it's not going to come up in court, which I think it would if we had another trial and these lawyers were dealing with it. But maybe it'll just kind of go away without people talking about it. But there's no way to look at Commissioner Cox's statements and Kelly Dever's testimony and not see them as completely opposed.
Yeah, so he just quoting from what Commissioner Cox said yesterday, he said, quote, "I have nothing to do with Karen Reed. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know this person was associated with the Karen Reed case." And this person, I believe, is Kelly Dever. But Kelly Dever's memory was that, they had a meeting. I think at one point it was just her and the commissioner. She was a rookie officer, and that's one of the things that Jackson kind of questioned her about during the trial. Like, hey, is that usual that rookies are being called up to have a private conversation with the commissioner? I think at some point Dever said that there was the general counsel for Boston Police was involved in these conversations. So it just struck me as sort of strange that I get it that he doesn't want to he wants to kind of move on from the issue, but these are kind of two diametrically opposed statements.
Yeah, they just don't jive. And by the way, what I said about Kelly Dever at the beginning of this conversation with Commissioner Cox, her detail sure seems like it happened. I tend to believe that this conversation happened. So where does that take us? I don't really know. Probably somewhere Commissioner Cox doesn't want to go. And that creates the issue with this entire situation is what's happening. Is it from a ground up situation? Is it from the top down where they're trying to protect each other? And I think a good indication may be what happens to Kelly Dever now. Because I think to have her investigate cases and be a cop that testifies, that might be completely gone and something that she can't do and be a career ender. But will Commissioner Cox protect her? Will he give her some other job? Maybe something more administrative that she can stay out of the limelight, out of the courtroom. Will this will not affect her? Will he look out for her? And if he doesn't, how will she respond? Because if I was her, I wouldn't like the comments he was making publicly, basically saying either it was insignificant or I didn't say anything about Karen Reed's case. Or again, if we're going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, maybe he was just having a normal conversation with a rookie cop and she took it to be specific about the Karen Reed case. I think that's a possible explanation that if I was Commissioner Cox, maybe that's what I would point to. I talked to all the rookie cops. I was telling them, it's so important what you do testifying in these cases. You make or break your career as a testifying witness. So make sure you go tell the truth and do your best. And she, because she had Karen Reed on the mind, she's subpoenaed by the defense team. Maybe she's nervous. She's a young cop. She took it to mean Karen Reed, but he never said it. Something in the interview, I think he said he's never strung those two words together, Karen Reed, in a sentence before, something to that effect. So maybe that's what he meant. Maybe that's what he was thinking. If we're giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, I think that's best case scenario for them.
And Dever has a long way to go. I mean, she's I think she's in her 27 maybe. So
Mhm.
she's young. This is her second department. She was with Canton Police prior. That's when she was working the day that John O'Keefe was killed. And yeah, I mean, this is I I don't know if she was necessarily expecting that she'd become sort of one of the more high profile figures in this case after, an hour of being on the stand. And I think it's partially because of what happened when she was on the stand. It was clear that she, was not a big fan of Alan Jackson. She was not afraid to push back, and she pushed back pretty hard, and it led to some of these electric moments in the courtroom. And, when you're 27, maybe you're not thinking that, hey, the whole world's watching, which was happening with this trial, and that then you become part of this saga where, any player in the saga certainly, is scrutinized.
Yeah, and I think her testimony was so disastrous that I actually thought it was bad for the defense when I was watching. She can't really be believed on anything. And she was arguing about everything and trying to make the defense attorneys look bad. And Alan Jackson had to do a really good job, which he did on redirect. And I was wrong. If you listen to the jurors, they all felt like Dever was a disaster, played into the defense's theory, and it's all continuing now. And Alan Jackson, listen, you can say he wants the limelight. You can say he doesn't want this to end. He's basking in it. Whatever people want to say negative about him, there's also a positive side to this for other lawyers and other people having to go into this. He's like, I want to make sure you guys all know about this. You know how bad this is. You know she can't be trusted. You deserve this information. Your clients deserve this information for a just and fair criminal process in a criminal litigation. So I want to make sure you guys know about this. And if lawyers didn't do that, if we didn't make sure each other knew the issues with law enforcement, if we didn't shine a light in this darkness, nobody would ever know about it. And it would be a lot easier to get away with things like this as law enforcement.
You think Jackson would have ever sent this letter had Cox's statements not come out?
That's impossible for me to know. I feel like if he had Cox's statements, they may have been referenced in this letter because it happened about the same time. I think you said the
Right.
day before. So it's almost like I feel like a follow-up is necessary because here's another person saying Kelly Dever created a false memory. Maybe we should add that to the list.
All right, that's a fair point, because that does raise another issue that he could at least paper
Mhm.
of sort of he said this, she said that, and that raises these questions.
He
Yeah, I
addressed
mean,
this.
yeah, go
Sorry, he
ahead.
addressed this to Commissioner Cox. He could say, "You of all people should know, sir. You said you don't even remember the meeting. She testified about it for 15 minutes."
Yeah, and on your previous point, yeah, it doesn't appear that this defense team is riding off into the sunset.
No.
And, you got to wonder what else is next. What's the next sort of shoe to drop? And I imagine if there's one to drop, they're gonna take it.
I think they're still fighting for justice to clear Karen Reed's name, to make sure the world sees what's going on there. People can hate them for it. I'm sure they will. People will have their feelings about that. But the point is, lawyers are used to being hated. I mean, that's
Yeah.
nobody likes a lawyer until you need one. And that rings true in this situation as well. And I don't think they're going to stop. I really don't think they're going to stop until they feel like they've done enough. And they've made some slight comments about The real killers are out there. We still, even the jurors, like, we need to go find who did this. The investigation shouldn't be done. Feds take a look at this again. And I think there's a lot going on in the background. We heard they signed a movie deal. What will that mean? What will happen with that? Who the heck knows? There are documentaries being created. I don't think this is over.
Yeah, no, I think that there will certainly be a telling of this, from the perspective of Karen Reed and from the perspective of Alan Jackson, and Jackson has the connections, being from LA.
Mhm.
And I mean, every time you turn on Dateline, he's there, because he's done one, and he's got another high profile case that he got recently signed on. Um, One other thing I kind of want to hit on before we I let you get back to your vacation, the fees for Brennan came out, and 250 an hour though is for a defense attorney. Don't most defense attorneys bill at like 5 and 6?
That's nothing. Yeah, for his experience and what he could probably bill, especially in a big jurisdiction like Boston, that's nothing. $250 an hour.
Yeah. So I
And I
mean,
don't mean to be
obviously,
insensitive. I don't mean to
yeah,
be insensitive. I'm cutting through it so people understand that is not a lot of money. $250 an hour. That is not really the most shocking part about this
no.
revelation that we've gotten.
Yeah, it was came up to be like $566,000, and I don't think you can question whether Brennan worked those hours. He certainly, I saw him there every day, and a trial like this, and the lawyering that went on in this case, and the papering that went on in this case, I'm sure every single hour was absolutely accounted for, but it still raises the question that, the line attorneys are making, the highest ones are making 170, 180, and the DA didn't use a line attorney. He went to the outside, and DA Morrissey still hasn't said why he decided to do that. Was that because nobody in the office would take the case, or was it because they just had so much confidence in Brennan and saying, "All right, this guy, we think this guy is our best hope."
So there's so many kind of thoughts I have around that, but you're right. He probably did work those hours. I saw some people saying that associates in big law firms usually bill $2,200 an hour to hit their bonus. That's all fine. You're not wrong about that. This is different. When you're trying a case like this, preparing a case like this, I can absolutely see how he could work over 2,200 hours in the, I don't know, seven or
Oh,
eight
heck
months
yeah.
that he's been working on this case. No surprise there. The issue is, why did the taxpayers have to do this? An attorney and a client. Nobody can really argue with the fees I get paid. If the client wants to pay them and they're fair and reasonable, which is not what you, Ted Daniel, think is fair and reasonable, it's what the client and I think are fair and reasonable. I'm not taking advantage of them, somebody that's under the influence or, anything like that. They're allowed to pay me a lot more money than you may think I'm worth. If they think I'm worth it, that's between us. This, on the other hand, is between the taxpayers and the elected officials that are in charge making these decisions. Why did you have to pay this amount of money? Why don't you hire better lawyers? Why don't you try to get a situation where you can make a salary higher? Why don't you train the lawyers better? Send them to more CLEs. Why did you have to do this in this situation to this amount? Yes, $250. Like I said, not a very high billable rate for him, but why did you have to do this if you're Michael Morrissey? And you had some interesting potential reasons why he had to do that. He has to answer to the taxpayers. And if it's an answer like what you just asked, that nobody else in that office would do it, that's a real problem for him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess if I was in that office, I'd be like, I want this, it's something that this is an
Well,
opportunity to be involved in something that,
unless you think you can't prove it. And as
yeah,
a prosecutor, you think you shouldn't prosecute it, then you don't want it.
yeah, yeah, no, we don't know the inner workings and how those
Mhm.
decisions were made. All right, I need to let you get back to your vacation. Thanks so much for jumping on with me. Like I said, this was kind of a big development that we were able to get our hands on the letter, and it's something that I think people will be talking about. And Peter, I thought that we were, as I said, I thought we were done. I don't think we are. I'll probably hit you up again. Hopefully not before your vacation's over, though.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, good to talk to you. Take care. That's Peter Tragos at Lawyer You Know. You can find him on all his streams. I'm Ted Daniel. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you the next time.